Good day, everyone. This is Pineleaf Needles, and welcome to DDO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in DDO and on the tabletop. And please welcome my co-host from Ravenloft, Dracula.
Hey, now everybody.
Welcome, Drac. And also, everyone, please welcome our guest for tonight, DDO Community Manager Cordovan.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
And also, DDO Content Designer NohBob.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me on.
And welcome to the show. Now, we have a little bit of an initiation for new guests. So, NohBob, what we want to know is your history with tabletop gaming, Dungeons & Dragons, and, of course, DDO.
Okay, so my background for tabletop gaming. My middle older brother, who's about 4 to 5 years older, him and his friends used to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was 7 or 8. They started really playing. So this was many moons ago. They were playing red box stuff and also playing first edition stuff. And so at the age of 8 or 9, I made my first character, which was a fighter magic user. Maybe thief, I don't quite remember. His name was Boo Boo. And so I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games off and on for about 30 years. My history for some of the rest of it. For DDO, this is my second stint on the development team with the DDO. My first stint was as a system designer from 2007 to 2009, and then most recently, about 2 years ago, I rejoined the DDO team, and I've been working with those guys ever since.
All right, then I will have to ask you, was your character's name inspired by the friend of Yogi the Bear, or because he had a tendency to make errors?
I have no idea. I mean, that was a long time ago. I just remember the name of the character, and then it was on graph paper, and
nice. You are old school then. Graph paper, nice.
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun times. I mean, it really kind of was a gateway to me getting lucky enough to do all of this stuff, and I've been playing games, and I've been actively gaming all the way through, and it's a blessing and it's a joy, and I've gotten really lucky along the way. So here I am, and I get a chance to, make some modules, make some monsters, put together some encounters, and hope people like them.
All right. Then let's head into game news, where this week the news is going to be, let's say, gains straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, presumably, maybe even by the time this episode gets published on your website, Update 33 will be out.
Woo!
Because you publish on Wednesdays, and
Correct.
We're currently targeting Wednesday for Update 33. I believe, and actually you could correct me, I guess, NohBob, if you know, we're taking tonight's build, is that right?
Yep.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
We were working on fixes for most of the day, making sure the last couple of monk things got in, and I think we're taking tonight's build.
So there's always a chance, we'll get into the office on Tuesday and something will have gone horribly awry. But assuming that doesn't happen and everything checks out, we should probably be pretty good to go for Wednesday.
All right. It's so you're hoping not to have a repeat of what happened to your sister game then.
Well, it's the same basic process, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
So we're crossing our fingers and hoping a lot, and honestly, we feel like it's in a pretty decent spot, but hopefully it'll be Wednesday.
So before we get into all the goodness of Update 33, I did have a couple of questions for NohBob. You are a senior content designer for DDO. What exactly does that mean? What do you do all day?
What I do all day, it's kind of a varied set of tasks. For the most part, I do dungeon work, and what dungeon work in DDO entails is everything from building the shells of the dungeons, the basic layout of the dungeon, adding props and deco to it, making and setting the monsters at least in a first pass capacity, choosing the monster lists along with the other developers, and then coming together with themes and concepts and stories that we want to tell over it, and then also coming up with what I like to consider sort of signature moments or signature portions of adventures. I think that's one of the things that we've been doing really, really well recently, kind of getting those oh wow moments, stuff like that. And it's sort of working on those things and coming together with that sort of stuff. Additionally, there's some non-dungeon related tasks. Sometimes I do pick up work on the system side, so I've done some work on some of the fighter revamps that we did, and also a little bit of monk work, just because Steel Star had his hands full and helping him out with that.
So in other words, you have like the coolest job in the world, is what you're saying.
I kind of feel like it. I've jumped between 5 different games, and this is easily one of my favorite jobs that I've had. Like, it's fantastic getting a chance to interact with the system, and it's a game that I love and I've loved for years. And the actual as the tabletop itself, and also as the game itself, it's something that I feel is really special, and I'm really blessed and lucky to have the opportunity to work on it. Now, that being said, it's a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of tears, all of those types of things, but it's a great opportunity, and it is so much fun to do.
Now, I know you had a hand in converting the Slave Lord series over.
Sure.
How exactly did you go about doing that, taking one of the classic tabletop adventures and moving it into DDO? Because I think you did a great job at it, but can you just tell about your thought process a little bit and how you started that?
Sure. It's the start of a classic pack is a little different than a normal update. For a classic pack, generally what we do is there's a round of discussions amongst ourselves and also with Wizards of the Coast regarding what is the target of our next classic pack. What we did is we went back and forth on a number of different ones, and we decided that it's kind of iconic to be able to do A1 through A3 for the different things, and so we kind of settled on, after kind of a long series of discussion and the amount of time we had and sort of the resources that we had available, we were like, okay, we think we could take the slaver stuff, we could make a really, really good representation of what they're doing and bring it to life. And so that's sort of how it starts, and then it goes down to, okay, what's the actual source material? And then we get copies of the source material, like right in front of me, because of one of the other questions that I saw on one of the sites. I have my copy, which I got from Amazon, and it's the old gold edition, like 1980s printing of it, and we pick those up, we print them out, and we start reading through them, and we start making notes and start coming together with encounter designs and sort of establishing and grabbing the themes that we feel are really important in the dungeon, and sort of what nods we can do, and also what twists in gameplay and game design, just because some of the effects and some of the things that they did in first edition doesn't particularly translate as well as it could into it. Like, one of the traps in my dungeon that I was working on, essentially what it does is it takes every magnetic object and pulls it to a magnet, and there's no way to recover it. And if I did that to players, they might have been a little grumpy with me, rightly so. And so the idea is kind of taking one of those concepts and then figuring out a spin. Okay, there's a magnetic trap. Okay, what could I do which is within the bounds of essentially fun gameplay in DDO versus what is classically accepted in first edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is super, super hardcore, and making that determination of, okay, what would be fun gameplay using this theme. I think that's kind of a decent overview. I mean, it's also looking at the setups of the specific things, like looking at, okay, what is the building are they supposed to be? What are the graphs of this? How close to this can we be, and how much content could we put in? I mean, one of the things about my specific dungeon is that we could have made an entire pack of 3 quests out of just the source material in my dungeon, in the original module from my dungeon. The amount that is not included, which is it's understandable and necessary for getting a playtime which is somewhat more acceptable, but like there's enough content in the original dungeon to probably do 3 dungeons out of just the second adventure.
And I know this might be kind of an unfair question, but do you find it easier to just create something from the ground up or try to convert one of the older modules?
For me, the ground up, it's about 50-50. One of the benefits of having the original source materials is that they have kind of the way that they think and the way that they look at encounters are completely different than how I would normally look at encounters. So seeing someone else's concept and idea and bringing that to life uses a certain different type of skill set. But also, when you're doing your own original stuff, you have a lot more flexibility in choosing monsters and making sure that the themes are going more with the story that you want to tell rather than the concepts that a previous designer went. If I was to take one that I prefer, it's probably building my own specific things just because I can kind of put a little more of my flair and my spin on what I want to do and kind of push different types of encounters in a slightly different direction. But it's an honor. It really is a stone cold honor getting the opportunity to bring these old dungeons back into life and into circulation for more eyes and for people to participate in the encounters.
Did you do much in Temple?
I was joining the team just as Temple wrapped up. So I essentially fixed a couple of bugs and smiled and waved and wished that juggernaut of a large dungeon on its way. But this is the first classic pack that I had the opportunity to work on, and it's been great. It was so much fun.
Okay. And then the only other question I had for you is on Saturday, I was in the chat room as they were recording the latest episode of DDO Cast, and somebody in the chat room brought up hand wraps, and I made a note to ask you because I knew we were going to have you on the show tonight. You were the original person that worked on hand wraps to start off with. So can you, once and for all, set the record straight and explain exactly what was broken about the hand wraps?
Okay, so I was one of 2 to 3 people which worked on hand wraps.
Okay.
There was an engineer which worked with us who did a lot of the programming on the back end of the system. So when you look at hand wraps and sort of consider that they're broken, some of it has to do with design philosophy and also the realities of making a video game. And one of the difficulties is really, like a lot of times, that you have to make really hard choices when it comes to the amount of time that someone can put into a certain thing. In this particular case, the amount of time that we had to put into making hand wraps as a weapon type, and given where we were in the development process, it was more rushed than we would have liked. So that's part one. And so essentially, it was a decision that was made by the management team at the time. I understand why they made some of those decisions. It just meant that the hand wraps worked differently than a standard weapon. And it's sort of unfortunate that it happened that way, and that I know it was a pain point for players for a certain amount of time. And by a certain amount of time, I mean a very long time, almost 8 years now, but it's something that is a reality of the game development process. Secondly, what was wrong with the hand wraps? So how the hand wraps worked is that essentially certain actual effects. The game itself is built in sort of a convoluted manner, and one of the things that happens is normally what happens is if you have an item, something applies an effect to that item, and that item, in the case of weapons, does all of the effects. In the case of hand wraps, they worked differently because they had to work with how they built unarmed combat. And so you had to place the effect on the person, and that person was actually the benefactor of those specific effects. I know that's kind of convoluted and seems really kind of confusing, but it's how it worked. And that was different fundamentally than how every other weapon was done, which caused the problems of why hand wraps couldn't do certain things that normal weapons could do. And that's sort of the cause of what happened. However, in our next update, between hard work of a whole bunch of different people, we will be putting out a new form of hand wraps. I hope you guys are really happy with them. I'm really looking forward to seeing players' reaction to them. Should be really good. Steel Star and the entire development team that worked on it really, really knocked it out of the park. Can't wait to see what they did.
And speaking of that update 33, which we do know is tentatively planned for Wednesday, we do know that Night Rebels is coming back, and that is going to include 2 new dungeons. And those are set in Haywire's Foundry, and I can't remember the other off the top of my head.
Lord's March Palace.
Plaza.
Plaza.
Yeah. Okay.
In Haywire's Foundry? Oh, good grief.
Yeah, it's the names of the 2 dungeons are Hayward Foundry and Getting Ahead in Lord's March Palace. That's the name of the 2 dungeons for the 2 additional dungeons for the Night Elves.
And then we do get new rewards, which is some cosmetic armor, which looks amazing. I cannot wait to get that armor. I don't know.
You can't wait to not roll properly on the random number generator?
Hey, all you got to do is collect the ingredients to get that. There's no rolling involved, so I'm going to be able to get it.
You just have to play through the dungeons a couple of times, a bunch of times, and get a chance at those. And then also there's a Ghostly Doom Sphere, which is really, really cool too.
And I have to get that too. Props and kudos to whoever decided to come up with the Doom Sphere. That is awesome.
We have some amazing artists that work on our game who help us out. Some of them are developers, and some of them are people which are pure artists. They do an amazing job. The armor looks great. I'm so excited for it.
In particular, we should give a shout out to Noah, who is also the person who did a lot of work on gnomes. So, she's really got a couple of really nice gold stars next to her name for the work.
She has done a tremendous amount of really heavy lifting when it comes to art wise, and she keeps on knocking it out of the park. I can't wait to see what she does next.
Yeah, that armor is just, I saw that armor on the live stream preview and I was like, oh God, I have to get that. That is awesome. And then a question about that armor. Can you glamour that? Or am I going to have to run this and get that for each character?
I wish I'd remembered that someone asked me that in chat recently. I was actually going to go onto Lamania and check to make sure. When I talked to Laro about it, she seemed to think that it probably would glamour.
Okay.
But we don't want to know. I don't want to say that for sure because I don't actually know that that's true. But I think it probably will.
Excellent. And then also in Update 33, of course, is the monk changes. You guys want to talk about those just a little bit, like a quick overview of what's going on with the monks? I know you did mention that the hand wrap are going to work as intended now.
Sure, maybe I can take this question a little bit, and then you can correct me as necessary. So the main areas with the monk this time around are hand wraps. We changed them from their old system to a formal weapon, which is now an exotic weapon. Monks will get that exotic weapon proficiency feat at level 1, and anyone else who wants to use hand wraps is welcome to take that feat. We also, that basically just makes hand wraps work like just about anything else in the game, and if you have any old hand wraps in your inventory or whatever, they should, fingers crossed, all work with the new system. Now, there may be some kind of odds and ends we're going to have to deal with afterwards, but for the most part, everything is looking like it's just going to work for these old hand wraps, so that's nice too. The other big bullet points are we did a lot of work on the enhancement trees. So the Henshin Mystic and the Ninja Spy and the other one. What's that one? Shintao. There we go. Sorry. I was mind blank there for a second. So Shintao. And we added a lot of, say, PRR to it. They can up their damage quite a bit through it. And we just really did a lot of work on the trees. They're the enhancement trees there. And you can kind of get more granular about that if you're interested by looking at the release notes.
And then is there anything else about the monk before we move on?
I mean, those are the main bullet points, is enhancements and hand wraps. I think that there was a little bit of work done on the capstone feat, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to go off the top of my head here, but yeah, that's basically. Oh, and then also the monk stance work received some changes as well. Stances are something, if you haven't played a monk before, when you are a monk, you've got various elemental stances that you can put into, kind of like almost like a power attack style stance or something like that. And each one, whether it's ocean or air, fire, water, will give you different benefits, and you can switch them out on demand to kind of do whatever you need to do in the dungeon you're in.
So is this making you excited to play your monk, Piley?
I am Well, let's see. I'm still trying to finish out my project for this year, but next year I'm going to get back to my monk.
Okay.
I will say this kind of in a general sense. For a little while now, we've had a monk is a pretty popular multi-class choice. People will take a couple of levels of monk to supplement whatever it is they're working on for their build. And I think it's pretty likely that we'll be seeing some more kind of pure class or large level investment monks here in the near future.
Oh, people haven't been playing high-level monks?
Well, I mean, there are some, right? But monk has been a really popular splash case for a while, and I think that we're going to make them they're coming into their own right in the modern sense of sort of the way our classes are popular and such with Update 33 here.
And then the only thing I kind of wanted to touch on is it's not, I repeat, not going to be in Update 33, but it was on Lamania when Lamania was up, and that is the Reaper mode.
Yes, we did an early test on Lamania here recently, and we're hoping to get that into perhaps Update 34, the December update. But ultimately, we're going to release it when it's ready. So if it takes a little bit longer, then we'll give it the time it needs.
And if you want an in-depth conversation on that, listen to the latest DDO cast, which is episode 449 when that comes out. I looked before the show, and Patrick hadn't had it released yet. But as soon as that comes out, that will give you a good in-depth discussion. But can you just give us a fast overview of exactly what the heck this Reaper mode is?
Sure. So right now when you click on a quest, you've got casual, normal, hard, elite. When Reaper difficulty comes, there's going to be another bubble to the right of elite, which is Reaper. And when you click on that, there's going to be a drop-down menu that gives you 10 levels of Reaper difficulty. So you can choose 1 skull to 10 skull. And the idea of Reaper difficulty is in some ways we've internally called it killer DM mode. And that's really the idea of it.
Drac mode.
The Dracula mode. Yeah, exactly. The idea here is that, we're upping our game and making it very difficult, and you're going to have to work potentially as a team or be super duper strong and see what you can do here. We haven't talked yet about the rewards and some of the granular stuff about how it works. We're kind of keeping it vague at this point because we really want the community to sort of work through Reaper difficulty on their own. But in general, it's a level above Elite that has 10 sub-levels in it, almost like our challenges, like for the Night Revels here, where you can pick a different level. It's kind of almost a halfway between those two. And it's just really going to kick your behind.
In other words, not suitable for Pine Leaf.
Probably. Well, depends on when you'd like to die.
Yeah. I think he dies enough, I think. So yeah.
Yes, I die enough without. I die enough on normal.
Poor Pine Leaf, no matter what he does, he's super squishy all the time. Poor Pine Leaf.
I feel I've had some rough weeks while playing through DDO with my friend group. It can be a little rough, Even normal every once in a while has those nice little gotchas, and you're like, oh.
Ow.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for 33, so we can move on. Pine Leaf, I'll turn it back to you.
Woo! And therefore, with that done, we can head into questions.
Woo!
Also known as Let's Roast Our Guest.
Yes, and we'll begin with some questions from the website, but if you're in the chat room and wish to post a question, you could do so, and if a question of that nature is not already in our list, I'm sure that Drac will sprinkle it in somewhere in our list.
I will try. We have a big list to get through, though, so we'll see what we can do here.
All right, we'll begin with Grass Kitch, who has some questions for NohBob.
All right, let's do this.
All right. First, what factors go into choosing the quests for converting into Night Revels challenge? Have you considered the suggestions from the forums of making... Oh, actually, go answer that one first.
So what happened was when we came up with the concept for Night Revels, we got together as a group of developers and also reached out to some other folks and was like, what are iconic spaces or spaces that are kind of full of DDO flavor, which it would be neat to see sort of a spin put on it. And so essentially we went through and we picked a handful of different quests. In this case, we've put 6 out. The initial bunch, I think, was a total of 8 that have been sort of at least the shells have been kind of put together and sort of reworked a little bit. And so we chose those 6 because we felt that thematically they were interesting. We had an interesting idea and twist of the story of what happened either before the dungeon when you went through it or afterwards, what some sort of spooky event that went through. And so that's what we went through making those choices. I'm very happy with the 6 dungeons we went with. The 2 dungeons that we did more recently, a little bit longer than the first ones, but not dreadfully longer, but it's supposed to be a shorter play span of something which is repeatable that players get a chance to go check out and get to see sort of our flavor on what we want to do for a night reveille / Halloweeny live event.
All right. Have you considered the suggestion from the forum of making Vale's Rainbow in the dark into a haunted house type challenge?
It's one of those things is that we looked at a whole bunch of different dungeons, and thematically it would be interesting to see what we could do with that specific space. But it's not one of the ones that we have selected thus far. But maybe next year what we'll do is we'll take a look and get a little additional feedback of some different dungeons and stuff like that and different themes and concept, like something you could do with that. And instead of sort of the method is using that torch as something which keeps away the say ghosts and stuff like that, which are encroaching on you. And you could do something which is kind of neat. But also it's kind of taking the space and what spin do you want to do on it. And since Rainbow in the Dark is a very specialized and very like iconic feel to it, I don't know how much adding the flair for the Fall Fest itself would work with that space, but it'd be something we'd have to take a look through.
Well, Graskich felt that it would be creepy to have things coming at you from complete darkness, which I guess is what inspired that.
Oh no, makes perfect sense. And one of the things that we try to do is play with the specific lighting elements and things of that sort in the dungeons to make them sort of feel a little more festive for the specific for the night revels.
All right, and although I did not really like rendering the plus Vagril at the anniversary event, since you have the existing monster, might you consider reusing that monster in a future Night Revels challenge?
Consider, absolutely. The Vargwheel and the plus Vargwheel monster was something which is neat, but it's something that we sort of have to consider. What's the next choice, or is there something which is a little different that we haven't found a way to use this year? You'll see that there's a new type of monster which we've included, and hopefully people kind of dig that. And so sometimes we like trying to find sort of a different spin that we could put on the individual monsters.
All right. I love the Bear Barrett in Grim and Barrett, but could you go back into the quest and modify it so that when he charges the door, any player standing in his path gets knocked down? It would be so much funnier and surprising with that momentum.
So that actually, like, it's a really good point, and it's something that's kind of interesting for that specific dungeon. So when we were putting it together, it was one of my ideas to do that. And one of the things is that first moment when you go through that specific encounter and sort of realize it and recognize that encounter, it's the moment of fun. I want you to witness everything that's happening, and if you're being knocked down, there's a lot more visual noise, and it also sort of distracts you from the action of what's actually happening, which is this awesome bear kind of, Kool-Aid manning his way through that door.
I love Barrett. Barrett's so cool.
And so as a part of that, it's one of those things that I like the idea of it knocking down, but the repetitive nature of the gameplay of that space, and of you playing that dungeon time and time and time again, and anytime you get stuck in that door, or you're fighting some things and someone has to click on that door, they'll always be knocked down. And so it's a sort of a gameplay conceit that I gave that's a little more enjoyable and also kind of allows players to keep on moving through it. But it's something that we do try to consider and look at while we're putting together these encounters.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I know there there are some places in Lotro where I felt that a mechanism like that was, repeated a few times too often. So I can appreciate that you consider that people would get tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
General Night Rebels question. Last year, the Liches and Succubi in the Delaris instance were advancing the monster manual extermination count. Has it been looked into whether all undead will now advance the monster manual in Night Rebels?
I'm going to let Jerry answer this one.
In general, our policy is that event monsters aren't meant to increment the monster manual. And the reason for that is since events are temporary, and although with Night Revels we plan to support it for a long time to come, some events come and go and don't come back. So if we do the work to hook them up to a monster manual, a player could find themselves in a situation where they simply can never fill out that part of their monster manual because the event is not coming back. So in general, we don't intend to have monsters in events increment the monster manual. But that said, they sometimes do, and we're not really very minded to go and remove them from the monster manual. So it's kind of one of those things where if it works, great, but it's not intended. But we don't typically set out to intend to have event monsters work with the monster manual.
All right. Then let's see what we have from the email.
Yeah, he had more questions.
Oh,
you just skipped over him. Yeah. He asked, since you were the original developer that worked on the implementation of the hand wraps, what is your favorite hand wrap in the game?
Huh. That is a good question. Most of the design work that I had done with the hand wraps was actually having to do with putting it into randomized treasure. And sadly, since I don't play a monk, I am not as familiar with hand wraps as I should be. So I'm not particularly sure, but maybe Jerry has an answer for him. What's your favorite, Jerry?
I am a fan of Thunder and Lightning. It's one that comes from What Goes Up. It's a high-level item that gives you +7 Shock, Shrieking, Impact, and a red Augment slot. That's a particularly good one. There's a new one in Legendary Tempest Spine that's kind of awesome. It's called Storm's Harness, and it's level 29. But has a 4.5 weapon damage. It's +13 bonus. It has deadly, stunning, shocking, shocking burst, shocking blast, greater reinforced fists, and a red and orange augments. So that one's kind of got everything. So those are some pretty great ones. Otherwise, on the teen level, there's some pretty good ones too. The Thorac Wraps is still kind of cool because it has a Phantasmal Killer clicky on it and can do nightmares and some cool things there too. And the Unstable Hand Wraps, which you can get from the Reign of Madness chain, are in the mid-teens as well. And they're pretty cool for that level range in particular because they have both Lawful Outsider Bane and Chaotic Outsider Bane. So if you're like in the Veil of Twilight on that, you're going to get a lot of good use out of it.
And the interpretation of the stuffed bear and the slave lords is rather amusing, but it sort of loses impact by being placed next to the collapsing floor. I am not sure how faithful that is to the original module, but would not a charging bear have made more sense if it rushed towards the party in a closed hallway? I feel this stuffed bear itself should also have a knockdown effect. He loves knockdown effects, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a big fan of knockdown effects. So
yes.
I have the module in front of me, and there's about 5 paragraphs that go into what the bear trap is. And there's some box text, which is, this is a wooden door. No sound can be heard from behind it. The door opens out into the hall. When the door is opened, there comes a low, rumbling, growling noise, and a grizzly bear on hind legs comes lurching out of the shadows. He rushes right at the head of the party. Cries of surprise are heard. And then it goes into the description of it. The bear is really a stuffed bear. Those standing immediately in front of the bear must make a save versus petrification and suffer some damage from having the bear fall on them. This stuffed bear was on a narrow wheeled platform and propped up on the floor and blah, 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 blah. The second part of it is the movement of the bear triggered another trap behind the party. A 10 by 10 section of the wall and floor 10 feet back from the door will pivot out of the north wall, dropping any party members onto that section into a 15-foot pit. A second wall will flip into place, and then the original wall will become the floor section. So that looks like nothing has happened. The front members of the party will not be aware of the rear members have disappeared until they look back and find out. The party will have mistaken any cries of surprise in response to the charging bear. There's some more stuff about what happens down inside it and how you get your people out. So that's the encounter as it's written. And essentially, first of all, to begin with, I don't feel that there's a need for knockback on this effect, or I don't know why he likes charging bears with knockback, but I don't think that's and so the falling floor is sort of my interpretation of how we go about doing that sort of floor gimmick. The difficulty, one of the constraints that we do when we're building these particular things is that I don't actually have a way to do a rotating floor that replaces itself, nor do I have a way to really push the belief factor that they disappeared and you don't know specifically where they went. I guess I could have done something like I did with the magnet trap and done an illusionary floor that's solid, and then you hit it and then everyone floats to the floor and then it becomes solid again. But then there's a couple of stages of trying to figure out how players discover what happened. It's a concept of discovery and learning and what they can choose to do and how they mitigate what's happening. I went through about 3 to 4 different options and sort of aspects of how I wanted to do this. And in playtests and getting feedbacks from the developers and also from the Lamania community and stuff like that, I felt like this was the strongest, closest interpretation I could have without being able to actually land a bear on you. And because there's no particular good way for me to have it fall on people, and figuring out where those people fall, like it would probably be a little more clunky. And so that I thought that what I could do is take sort of the thematic aspect of what they were trying to do, which is, hey, this is a fake bear scaring people, and essentially the spectacle of the bear is the surprise portion of what the real trap is, which is the floor aspect of the trap. And so that's why I went about making the bear in the manner in which I did.
And Grasskitch is in our chat room, actually, and he says, oh, okay, I see. It's part of the original module. And it's just that I missed seeing that stuffed bear myself the first time because I fell down the trap.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you hop back up and you go through, you can hear Travis Willingham, which, by the way, was a real trooper when we were doing those voice recordings. And when we talked to him and we were trying to be like, hey, could you do a say the word roar in a really sort of disinterested tone? That'd be really good. It's like, it's for a bear. And he's like, oh, you want me to roar like a bear? We're like, no, that's not exactly what we want you to do.
Nailed it.
Roar.
Roar like someone who thinks they're...
Yes. If he was a little apathetic in saying the word roar, we'd really appreciate that. And he knocked it out of the park. It was...
Yes. Roar like you weren't as good as a voice actor as you are.
Exactly, something like that. But yeah, that's sort of the way that we look at these specific encounters, is that we took a couple of specifically iconic portions of the different dungeons, and then we're like, what gameplay aspects can we actually bring and make a part of the game and that we can really do justice to? Like another instance is sort of the bees room and the bees and the honey, and how we could make that into an encounter that people run into and affect.
And cry about. And cry about, yes.
If I had my druthers, maybe another pass or two could have been done on the bees to make them a little more interactive, but I was pretty happy how those specific, like, very thematic moments in the dungeon did come out.
All right. Drac, are you ready for the email now?
Yep. It's from Enar, and they say, considering that lower-level raids tend to fall out of favor and thus not getting ran as much, combined with the fact that all raid completions reset on TR, is there any chance of making Essences of Cleansing available in some way that does not include 20 runs of the Shroud in the same life? Maybe if the raid completions didn't stop reset on TR, or it could drop in the last chest on Elite, or maybe available through the DDO store or something.
That's probably a better Jerry question than me.
Sure. I'm reading the question again, just to kind of make sure I understand it. Is there any chance of making Essences of Cleansing available in some way that doesn't include 20 runs of the Shroud in the same life? Is the core of the question there. The answer, is there any way? Yes, but we don't at this point have any interest in expanding that. You can get those Essences of Cleansing without doing 20 runs, although the most common way is to do 20 runs and then see that as your 20th completion list and choose that for an Essence of Cleansing. You don't need an Essence of Cleansing to make a Shroud weapon, so this is really just a way to remake a Shroud weapon, a heroic Shroud weapon. It's worth kind of considering whether perhaps, given the passage of time and that, we could make it easier to deconstruct heroic Shroud items. But overall, the system has served pretty well for quite a few years, and I'm not sure we have a lot of interest in changing it at this point.
All right. We also have some questions from the Reddit subreddit r/DDO. And the question from RobSub43 is, would it be possible for Caneth Challenge tokens to be given automatically each day on logon for users who don't have the pack? Would it be possible to deconstruct items into essences anywhere, or at least anywhere where you can sell them?
So Caneth Challenge tokens are given automatically each day by visiting one of the token vendor in House Caneth. And you'll get a certain number of tokens back based on whether you're free, premium, or VIP. So we could, I guess, just give them automatically to you in your inventory, but since they're available on demand, that's probably a better option. That way people don't have to clear them out of their inventory if they're not necessarily interested in getting Caneth Challenge tokens. But if you are, they are available to you for free in House Caneth. Oh, for users who don't have the pack. That's a good question, though. I have never tried to see what happens if you don't have the pack and try to talk to the token vendor. But my understanding is it works, right? As long as you got the token, you can get in. And by having the pack, you don't need the tokens anymore. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Right, yeah. If you have the pack, you do not need the tokens in order to enter. You only need the tokens if you don't have the pack.
Yeah. So perhaps Robsta is just not aware that, or just wants it to show up automatically rather than have to go to the vendor. And that's great. I'm glad you like the challenges that much. But I think they are, since they're available just by talking to a vendor, probably a better solution than having them show up in everyone's inventory.
Yeah, I know that in Lotro there are a lot of complaints about things that pop up when they first log on and stuff like that. So there are some people who would like that and some people who get annoyed by it.
For the second, did you read the second half of the question?
Yeah. Would it be possible to deconstruct items into essences anywhere, or at least anywhere that you can sell them?
We do have an option to deconstruct items remotely. It's called a remote item deconstruction, and it's available in the DDO store. So if that's of a particular interest to you, it's very inexpensive, and you could find it in the DDO store, and that'll let you even do it in the middle of a quest. You could be running down a hallway and deconstructing your items if you want to multitask it. But as far as, say, adding that to any NPC vendor, we do want you to either choose to purchase that item or go to one of the crafting halls and do it without any expenditures on your end.
And where are the crafting halls? Obviously, there's one in House Caneth, but are there others?
There's one in House Kundarak. That's really pretty easy to get to, just right off the marketplace. If you go into House K, House Kundarak, you'll see a doorway straight in front of you, and that's one of the Caneth crafting halls. Additionally, a lot of guild airships have Caneth crafting deconstruction stations on them as well. So you can, if you're already going to your airship, say, to up your ship buffs or whatever, you can quick take care of it that way as well.
And also from the subreddit, Renew asks, are there any plans to fix the throwing weapon multiplier? Currently, the multiplier is displayed, but it doesn't actually correspond to damage.
I know that is something that Steel Star has been working on to try to get working, but it's a very difficult task. It would, unfortunately, there's some kind of weird, well, I don't know, weird's the right word, some challenging, intricate ways that sort of thrown weapons work and ranged missile weapons in general work in the game that make a consistent application of the weapon multiplier surprisingly unreliable. And so I don't know if it's going to take essentially recrafting our thrown weapons from scratch, similar to hand wraps, or if there's a way to make it work. But every dev over the years who's taken a look at it has ended up saying, "Oh my gosh, I guess we're not doing this." So I don't know what. Yeah, I don't I don't have the technical expertise as to what it is, but I think it's going to be a fairly big project and something that's not something that can quickly be done.
Well, based on the number of devs that you indicate have given up on it.
Well, I'm not saying there's like in the dozens here, but I know at least a couple who have been like, because it's something that comes up on the forums and that quite a bit. Or said, okay, let me try to tackle this, and then a couple hours later they're like, well, okay, throw out my hands. I guess we're just going to have to do this some other time. So.
Yeah. And sadly, it's one of those things that sometimes when you're looking through issues, you're like, oh, this is something that some people want to do. And you do your investigation time. And your investigation time can take anywhere from like a couple of minutes to hours. And sometimes you realize how far down the rabbit hole things are. And it may also not be in your skill set to fix things like this. I think Severlin may have been looking at this today. So.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I didn't know that. But I know that there have been several efforts to make it work, because especially now that we do have monctures and things like that really do like their thrown weapons. It's something we'd like to get working more consistently.
And then they also ask, on a less serious note, if you could have one superpower, what would that be?
Well, I just saw Luke Cage on Netflix, so the idea of being invulnerable sounds pretty awesome. I mean, seriously, you could take a bullet, a car could hit you, just like, yeah, whatever, man. I think I could probably deal with that. That'd be what I'd want.
See, sort of my problem is that most of the different superpowers would just make me a lot lazier, and I don't think that that's really good. Like, telekinesis is really sweet, and so is teleportation, but man, I would get really lazy if I was doing either of those two things. So it's tough. Maybe flight might be really good. Super speed might be really decent, because then you're actually doing the movement. I'll go with super speed.
You'd burn a lot of calories with super speed too.
Yeah, I know that, and that would really kind of help right now.
Me too.
All right, let's then head on from the forums. And Silveris asks, I've been pretty excited with Update 33 Lamania patch notes. Now that you've had some players test and give feedback on some of the things, which change are you most happy with, and what part do you think might need some more fine-tuning? Did it surprise you that players completed 10 Skull Reaper modes so quickly?
No.
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 We may have surprised some Sev, but I was just like, I told him ahead of time, I was like, they're going to solve this on day one, right? But I would underscore, this is an early test and should not be indicative of what the final difficulty level of it's going to be. We wanted to get it out early, just kind of get a sense of, hey, are we heading in the right direction? Is this generally about the ballpark? And the answer to that is yes, but clearly, the intention is not to have people necessarily walk in there and with a lot of deaths complete 10 Skull Reaper difficulty. And I think when it actually hits live servers, they will have a much more difficult time doing that.
And it's one of those things when it comes to changes that we're happy with. I'm really happy. Like, I won't go into specific changes, but I'm glad that we kind of went through a lot of different fixes in the one bug thread. I'm really happy that they've gone in, that we're doing that for the last couple of updates. We've been taking extra time making sure that we can do quality of life fixes for the game. It's a really important portion and something that we've really kind of redoubled our efforts to make sure that we went out of our way to do. This is a game that we love, and we understand that there are some small frustrations with the game and things that we could do to make things a little easier. And I'm super glad that we're getting a chance to do it. Hats off to No Worries for most of his work. He's been doing a lot of the work on that. Some other folks have been pitching in too, but really I can't say enough about the work that he's doing right now.
All right, our next question is, are hand wraps really fixed?
Oh God. let us decide that yes, update 33 will be released on Wednesday, and there will not be a single hand wrap related bug in the game. Yeah. I promise that's going to happen. Yeah.
what I would say is that they've been re-architected, and so they have a much solider base, a much more solid base. Wow, solider, well done. Much more solid base to go forward from. It's been a major undertaking, and as a part of that major undertaking, there might be a few things that slip through the cracks. We do our best to make sure that that doesn't happen, but I really do believe that they will be in a much better state.
And one of the big things too with it is that we were able to engineer it in a way that all these hand wraps up to this point, really for the most part, are just working, and that is a real big win on our end too, because that's not always as easy to do either as you might think.
All right. Congratulations, then. Now that hand wraps are fixed, will Whirlwind Attack be fixed so that it works properly with all weapons?
I know that Steel Star was looking into that today and did some work on it, but there's still more work to do. Let me see if I can actually call up his post from today where he talks a little bit about it so that I can get you some good information.
I can go forward if you have a next question while he looks that up, if you want.
All right, there we go. I happen to be interested in Against the Slave Lords Module 4. In a perfect world where you had enough time and resources to work out the problems with it, is this something you'd be interested in adding to the game?
If we had enough time and resources to work out the problems with it, would it be something? Yes, because it's a perfect world in which I have enough time and resources to do everything that I want to. I know that's a really kind of flippant answer. The answer is that Slave Lords 4 is sort of an interesting challenge, just because that is the module in case you fail, in which you become a slave yourself, and you essentially, now this is memory trying to serve. I believe it's an adventure in which you essentially fight back from having nothing and try to reclaim and sort of and succeed on it. Is that something?
You actually start out with just you're in slave rags and you have no weapons, no armor, no nothing.
Yeah. That is probably so in a perfect world, yeah, that'd be totally something that we're doing. Is it something that we'll be adding? I'm gonna say doubtful, but I won't ever say impossible because we never know. It's something if there's enough interest in that type of thing. One of the difficulties is taking away everyone's items, suppressing all of the effects on the players, given everything that happens. Also, the functionality of classes when they don't have weapons, things of that sort, would make for a very challenging precursor to that dungeon, and might make it difficult for that to be a reality. But it is a neat scenario and something that's kind of fun, but it would probably take more time and energy than it would normally be put into that type of one-off module.
All right, I do have the answer on Whirlwind Attack. Just to help the chat room here a little bit, one of the big issues with Whirlwind Attack is that it's not always benefiting from double strike or the offhand attack chance. And what Steel Star did late this morning actually was for Update 33, the first hit will act like the weapon version of it does. And he's added back in a second hit for centered characters that are wielding hand wraps, which will benefit from double strike and offhand attack chance. So it's not really 100% of where it was, but it's a lot closer than it was prior to today's work. There's some kind of funky behavior going on with sort of offhand attack chance and double strike and whirlwind attack, and that was what we could get done in time for Update 33 here. But when time permits, we're going to probably have to take another look at it.
Are there any plans for a quest or raid where stealth is required for an optional part of the quest? Well, perhaps some sort of motion sensor, sound sensor that needs to be bypassed to pull a lever to let the rest of the party through, while the rest of the party has to fend off waves of enemies to keep them from distracted if they aren't such stealthy types.
Is there plans? Not at this moment, but it's something that we do try to noodle around and keep in thoughts in the mind. There are portions of even Slavers 2 which you can bypass a section of it by using stealth mechanics. It's something that we try to do, but it's not something that we have a specific plan to do at this moment.
I would say there are a couple of quests to look at already that do have optional stealth requirements. They tend to be fairly challenging, but I know some of our more stealth-minded players enjoy that challenge. So, there are some quests already in the game. I'm thinking there's one in the Red Fens that's good for that. There's, of course, Stealthy Repo in the harbor and a few others as well. So, who knows? It's something, I guess I don't want to necessarily speak for you, NohBob, but it's one of those options that's in your toolkit. And so maybe where it's appropriate and where it seems like the right choice, it's something we could always do in the future.
And then also Alan Way asks, first off, let me just start by saying thank you, art devs, for more cosmetics. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's move on to my questions. When will the bugged Caneth crafting shards be fixed? Specifically, I'm talking about the armor piercing, spell resistance, insightful deadly parrying, and death block.
I will need to look up more about in what way are they broken, because my understanding is they do work right now in New Caneth, don't they?
And then he says most of the details can be found in LSD 37's thread list of bug shards.
Okay.
Can you please make sure someone is aware of these issues?
All right. I mean, I know that we do have, some Caneth crafting bugs that we're going to need to work on in future updates here. But I know one big thing that is coming in update 33 here is we've brought back skill tomes that can be traded for purified Eberron Dragon Shards, except for the ones you get for free on character creation for obvious reasons. And we also did fix a lot of the issues where the non-scaling prefix effects can be dissolved. I don't know that we've caught all of them, but I know that we've caught a lot more of them. So I think we're going to be in a better state with update 33, but I'm going to have to go back to LSD's thread to find out specifically what the issue is with some of the shards that are in that question.
And then another question they had is anyone working on converting the old bound to item cosmetics to new bound to account glamored items? If not, why not?
This is a question we've answered in the past, but it's worth probably saying again. Is someone working on it? No. Could we theoretically in the future? Yes. Ultimately, it comes down to a matter of economics. The amount of development work that it would take to, say, make all the old bound to item cosmetics into new versions, which is essentially making a whole new cosmetic outside of the artwork there, it would be a loss on our end from the money side because we would not sell enough of them to justify the work that it would take to put them all into cosmetics. And we've said that before, although it may have been a couple of years even since we said it. So no, although we have a list of ones that if we have time and we have the ability to do it, some of the ones we think would be most desirable in the current market are something we could theoretically do in the future, but at this point, I think we're probably more likely to make new cosmetics than retrofit old ones. Oh, sorry, is someone muted?
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Yep.
He also asked, is there a target update for the next Universal Enhancement Tree? And apologies if this was answered elsewhere.
I don't know that there's a target update per se, but there is a plan in the works for another Universal Enhancement Tree.
And then when will the Banishing Smiting Disruption return to the random loot tables? Are there any places besides Auction House, Astral Shard, Auction House, Old Loot to still get items with these permutations?
Under our new system where we have random gen loot, the new random gen loot, Caneth crafting, and named loot, we've put those particular properties into the named loot tables. So I think you're going to see them in named loot rather than the random loot tables. So when will they return to the random loot? They probably will not. And that is a specific choice to differentiate some things between Caneth and random gen and named loot. Sorry.
And then his last question is, are we ever going to get completed worthwhile favor rewards?
We're well aware that there are some significant gaps in favor rewards. It's been a long-term issue, and trust me, I'm sure Bob can probably attest. I bring it up.
Yes,
But-
it is on our list, and we know it's something that we need to address.
Yeah, it's going to take, one of these, the favor is a fairly old system in DDO, and so it's going to take a bit of a deep dive on the part of one of our developers to really figure out out how best to sort of bring it up to date for modern gameplay and find those gaps and find things to fix it up with right now. That's not to say that no one knows how to do it right now, but it's just something that is not a huge part of our skill set at the moment. So we're just going to have to do the work it would take to really bring that into fruition.
Okay, and Zebedar over on the forums asked, could you ask them about items on the known issues list? When are some of those going to be looked at and fixed? For example, the critical multiplier thrown weapons has been bugged for a couple years now, and we did talk about that earlier, I think.
Yep.
I think that's the same one we talked about.
His question essentially, is it in the patch notes? Then it will be fixed for this update. If it's going to be a longer fix, then it will be announced when we're going to actually do the update.
I do know we have a few things that are in particular, Zebedar has frequently focused on the forums on our older known issues list rather than, say, our new by update public notices. So from our old known issues list, we have a few I know that are going to be there. There's a couple of text changes that are in the notes. In particular, I know one that comes up fairly regularly, the optional objective where it tells you need to kill X number of something, except you don't get to see what the something is because of a change that happened a while back. That is in update 33 to be fixed, so we are going to take care of that one as well. There's a few other things in the known issues list, the old known issues list that we're going to look through. Some of that stuff, frankly, we need to do a top to bottom pass on the known issues list to see if it's even still applicable nowadays. Some of that stuff may either just not be fixed or really is just old stuff that was fixed a long time ago and needs to be pulled from the notes. And in some cases, it's things that we're just going to have to fix in the future.
All right, then let's head into Enderock. Why was melee power chosen to scale with monk attacks when TWF line doesn't grant melee power?
Mostly because I'm speaking for Sealstar here, so but I know in general, melee power is a good way in the enhancement line to increase the damage of monks as they invest in the tree. So that's ultimately why it was chosen. Why it's not in 2 weapon fitting, I'm going to have to look that up in terms of what all feats do grant melee power. Okay, yeah, so like say for example, 2-handed fighting does grant you a certain combat style bonus to melee power. So I guess 2-handed fighting does offer, some level of melee power. I believe up to +6 if you go up to greater 2-handed fighting. But overall, that is one of the main things about 2-handed fighting over 2-weapon fighting. It's not to say we couldn't do it, but it just wasn't the design choice. The design choice was to put the melee power into the enhancement trees.
Dunk goes on to ask, Cordovan, what forum mod-related superpower do you wish you had? No actual murder is allowed to occur, though.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do anything like that. I would... For DDO, frankly, I'm pretty happy with things right now. On the Lotro side, I sure would like to be able to get rid of those spammers once and for all. So yes, that's what it is. I can get rid of internet spam. Then I would be treated as a god.
And then he's got a question for NohBob. Let's say you get a work on what you want week. All your deadlines are cleared. All existing jobs are on hold unless you choose one for that week's task. And you're free to come up with whatever you want to do. What are you going to do?
Oh, God. Part of the problem is everything I would want to do is probably longer than a week. The types of things that I would love to work on is I'd love to come up with, I'd like to work on a Boston Box raid. I think that would be fun. I think it's something that we could probably use in the near future. I'd like to see if there was a way to rework the old Maybar Spectral Dragon into an encounter which is a little more manageable, given what we've done, but that might be longer than a week. Other things, what would I want to do? I would want to... It would take longer than a week for me to do it, but I would want to fix a bunch of UI stuff. I am not familiar with exactly how all of our UI systems work, but there are a number of pieces that bug me, and I would love to fix them. And I think that those are the types of things that I would love to do.
NohBob, don't cut the red wire. Trust me. On the UI, it's bad. So.
Oh no, I know. I have been talking to Severlin about a lot of it. I want a UI. All right.
No, a UI is absolutely. It frequently comes up on our list too, but it will be a big project when we get around to
God.
it.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
One of those. All right, then let's go to Crexus's question, which is, will we ever go to the Sword Coast in DDO? It just seems like we got the Faerun, but all we do is run around the boonies in Cormyr. I would love to get to go to the locations many of the books and CRPGs are set. Waterdeep, Neverwinter, 10 Towns, and Baldur's Gate particularly. Don't get me wrong, I am also a fan of Ravenloft, but Forgotten Realms is my favorite setting.
There's a bunch of factors involved as far as where we develop in the Forgotten Realms setting, and some of that is competitive, some of that has to do with licensing, some of that has to do with really conversations and other competitors in that space. So there are some limits as to where we can go on the Forgotten Realms setting, and up to this point, the Sword Coast has just been not something that we're able to pursue.
And then Virtual Gib asks, this isn't a Night Rebels are Reaper related question, but I was wondering if there is any chance of getting some attention to cooldowns on clickies. For example, the Eternal Flask. When you exit a quest, if you've had the buff running, you lose the buff, but you're still on the cooldown. It would be nice if either the buff stayed with you as long as you're on the cooldown, or the timer reset when you leave the quest.
I believe this is probably related to kind of a long-standing occasional issue in DDO, where when you go from a portal from one instance to another, it's possible to lose some of those buffs that carry with you. Meanwhile, the cooldown system is independent of that. So you lose the buffs when you, say, go through a portal in some cases, but not always. But the cooldown will remain. So we may need to look specifically at Eternal Flasks. I know there was some work to keep certain buffs persisting in areas where they weren't working very well, and we did succeed on that, but it's a bit of a whack-a-mole where we have to find individual instances and fix them that way. At least that's what I understand it to work.
All right, Grander Marn asks, where did NohBob get his name?
NohBob was a handle that I came up with when I was working on Firefall for Red 5 Studios. I had to come up with a Twitter thing for. Previous to that, I had used Nobody, NohBdy, which is something from a translation from the Odyssey, which Odysseus calls himself when the Cyclops, is asking who took his eye.
It sounds like the Robert Fitzgerald translation.
Yeah. And that's where Nobody is from. And so when I was coming up with something, I wanted to do a riff on that, so I went with NohBob.
Okay. And from NohBob's interview in the 10th anniversary, we discovered that he is the man behind the first iteration of hand wraps. Yes.
It's really important. I didn't do it all myself.
Considering the time and personal limitations behind game development, how do you feel about you guys having the opportunity to revisit hand wraps? And can you expand on your work as a developer and the limitations of work at the time, assuming we haven't gone through all that already?
I just want to say that I'm overjoyed that we had a chance to go back and make substantive fixes to it. I think it's an important fix that we're doing, and I'm super psyched for it. It means that hand wraps are no longer sort of an offshoot of our weapon types and can be brought into other systems when we go forward with crafting systems, things of that sort. I'm just overjoyed that we got the chance to actually go back and do it. How do I feel about the opportunity to revisit, and can you expand on your work as developers and the limitations of work time? You have a certain amount of hours that you can put into these things, and many of these dungeons and things like that become passion projects for us. For me, there are many hours, there's many weeks that I work 40, 50, 60, 70 hours when I'm working on something that I feel particularly passionate about. And there's a real balance for sort of what you're passionate and interested in making and are really proud of what you're putting together, and also your home life work balance stuff, which is really important for developers to be keenly aware of. It's one of the struggles that you go through in any profession which you're super passionate about.
All of us work certain hours and generally prefer not to work overtime. In the years you have been at Turbine, did you ever find yourself taking work home with you or staying late? Oh, well, I think you pretty much answered that already.
Yes. I when I'm working on a project, I work late hours. A lot of times I work at the office. I sometimes work from home, but a lot of the proprietary tools work only at the office. So yes, I work late nights, Saturdays, Sundays, all that sort of stuff. I totally do that because it's important. It's very important for me to tell the story that I'm trying to tell, or make the encounter that I want to make, and make a fun encounter for people. And sometimes it takes some extra time, and sometimes it's also I've made design decisions which are my own hole that I've dug for myself. And in order to, and it's a classical game design difficulty that you can sometimes do. You're a little too big for your britches, and so understanding sort of how to scope yourself and all those types of things are important. But you do really have to think of the players and how players are going to interact with what you're doing, and some of those extra nights and weekends came out with some of my favorite encounters. It's the reason why I'm really happy about stuff like Roar or the Bees or things like that. Is maybe that was an extra night, maybe that was an extra day, but how much better is that content for that signature moment and that extra time that I spent?
Right. And in your interview with Cordovan, we also discovered that you are the man behind the door bashing Bear and Grim Barrett. Now that we get back to that.
I'm right about that, aren't I?
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay, good.
How about the shrubbery ambush at the end? Was that your creation?
Yep, that entire dungeon. That's my creation. Grim and Barrett was sort of an interesting design problem I got asked. Hey, we have these doors, and we want a more interesting way for someone to be held up by doors and to solve that problem. So can you think of anything? And I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a bear through it. And that may sound a little ridiculous, but that's sort of where that came from. And the shrubbery stuff, we had already come up with the concept that it was going to be like an evil cleric or druid who was corrupting the thing. And I'm like, okay, what type of monsters can we use? They're like, well, we have these bushes. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to attack people with bushes and run bears through things. These are, for me,
why not?
Well, it's kind of important to have those moments where players are like, oh, Grim and Barrett, which dungeon is that? Oh, it's the dungeon where the bears run through the doors, or the second Slave Lords. Which dungeon is that? Roar. Those are iconic and special moments that people will remember 5-10 years from now, and it's amazing that I get the opportunity to make those types of encounters.
Any plans for future attack foliage? Allow me to propose shambling mounds or veggie pigmy.
Hopefully, I would love a shambling mound. I think that would be fun.
Be terrifying.
A veggie pygmy. I've read a lot of D&D, and I have not heard of a veggie pygmy, but I'm going to look that up when I get done with this.
All right. Drac, what's in from the Steam community?
We do have a couple more questions. We have made it to the end, folks. We did it.
Ooh, wow.
Mara Yu over on the Steam community asked, Sniffle, will the old Maybar event ever return?
No, not in the manner in which it was. Essentially, there were a number of systemic design and development problems with it, which caused the lag that was happening. And so it essentially meant that portions of it were untenable for us to upkeep. Every time it went live, there were dramatic problems with it. The thing that I will say is, though, that there are concepts and portions of that old event, everything from the itemization all the way through some of the stuff that are really iconic, and we would love to have the opportunity, given infinite amount of time and given time and effort, to bring back something like the Skeletal Dragon thing, but in perhaps a more manageable and more easy to encounter form. The 24 free kind of free-for-all raid concept maybe wasn't executed as well as it could have been in the time, and so perhaps we can find a different way to present that to players.
Okay, and then our final question from the Steam community is Zappany, I don't know how, I'm sorry if I just totally butchered your name there. I'd like to know if they're ever going to go look for additional ways to monetize the game. Right now, I can only imagine their big money makers are +1 hearts, iconics, tomes, bags, and new content. If you look at every other major player in the F2P arena, you see some things like skins, voice packs, and so forth being the big sellers. Would it be even remotely possible to purchase DM voice packs, for example, and have them narrate? I'd drop $15 to have Troy Baker narrate for me, for example.
I think the idea of Dungeon Master voice packs may be a little outside of the scope of what we could do. Voice work tends to be costly enough that I think from an e-commerce perspective, it might be difficult to justify that. I don't know. There may also be some technical issues that I'm not aware of as well. But in terms of the main point of your question, are we ever going to look for additional ways to monetize the game?
Yes.
I think you might be an e-commerce plant. No, the answer is yes. We're always looking for ways to support our game and be able to expand our revenue, which allows us to do bigger and better things. So and one way that we do that is when we do introduce new systems like Caneth Crafting, we make sure that a lot of it's free. Most people can just kind of do Caneth Crafting as they want to, but we like to have optional ways that people can help support the development of that system and future systems through ways to monetize. Like in the case of Caneth Crafting, it is remote item deconstruction and a few other things. We have some craftable weapons available in the DDO store. Skins, we do have cosmetic armors and cosmetic items like what you'll see in Night Revels. Sometimes we sell those in the store. A lot of times we give those away in daily dice or let you earn them rather through gameplay. It's probably a better way to say that. So it's something that we're always looking into. Voice packs, I know that would be awesome, right? I just knowing what little I know about our process of how we hire a voice actor and get that into the game, I suspect it might be a little outside of the scope of something we're likely to do.
Yeah, I would think that would be a nightmare to.
There would be a series of technical challenges which would have to be overcome to allow us to do it, but it's an interesting idea.
And that is actually it for our questions. We don't have any questions from the chat room, but Grasskitch did say, we do have to give kudos to NohBob for the 3 unique traps in the Slave Lords for being very memorable and unique. The gust of wind into the canal waterway, the roaring stuffed bear, and the magnetic pull trap. I love these so much more than the randomly spawning traps. I sure wish Temple of Elemental Evil had more unique traps like these. Oh yeah, and the bee's honey. So 4 memorable traps. These traps are so wonderful.
Let's see, Temple of Elemental Evil, you know which trap I remember.
You and that ballista.
Yeah, that ballista.
Oh, that ballista.
Were you No, that's right. That was before your time.
No,
It's Pine Leaf every time. Whoever made that, you've killed Pine Leaf. I don't know how many times.
I'm pretty sure that's
I take a different.
Yeah,
I take a different direction whenever I go in that section now.
I would say one thing about Temple of Elemental Evil too with Sealstar and other folks' work is sometimes when you've got that, you want to put the extra coolness into the dungeon. It's done through traps, and sometimes it's done through various combat systems or things like that. So Temple of Elemental Evil, it's got like that end fight where you've got the 4 elementals in the 4 sections. There's got that section where you kind of levitate up and fight the Earth Alley. I mean, there's a bunch of kind of things that are like that in scope that are in Temple of Elemental Evil. Perhaps, completely unique, randomly spawning traps and stuff is not the direction that we went with Temple, but ultimately there was certainly a lot of kind of extra work put into that to make it special.
And there were a lot of really specific encounters. Each of the elemental wings had really interesting and sort of compelling mechanics in them, which were really a Herculean amount of effort and work that they put into each of those portions. So it's just a question of where you can and are able to spend your time for those things. I think some of the fight encounters in the temple are a lot more memorable than, say, any of the fight encounters that I personally put into my dungeon, and it's something that I need to look forward when I'm building a dungeon. I look to the Temple of Elemental Evil and some of the encounters that Steel Star put together. Like, it's just a question of where you put the time in. As a note, I didn't do the push trap. That was Kitani, I think I don't know if that's Eric's name.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And that was his. And the other three were ones that I worked on, but I had help from Steel Star and all the folks. It's sort of like a team effort and a lot of feedback loops and stuff like that. So it's to say that I was lucky enough that our source material was very kind to me regarding those specific things. I think that the gelatinous cube track in the third dungeon is amazing, is just amazing, and the pull rope is also really good too. Anyway, I'll stop yammering about the different traps that I love, and yeah, that's about it.
All right, then let's hit in store sales. Drac, what's on sale this week?
We have 20% off the select monster manuals, the Slayer count boost, yay for Slayer count boost, select pets and accessories, and the companion name changes. And once again, I'm going to add my little spiel I give every time those are on sale. Do not pay for companion name changes, people. Sorry for the Future Turbine people that are here, but no, don't do it. Do not buy that.
Well, if you really want to,
Well, I guess. And then we have an awesome free sample this week. Who doesn't want Kindaric orange hair dye? Use the coupon code Fall Hairdo, and you can get one of those per account.
Yeah, free
hair.
Yeah, free sort of festival themed hair dye. I mean,
that's right. Orange hair dye. One of my characters may or may not have orange hair as we speak.
Okay.
Once again, that coupon code is Fall Hairdo.
All right, let's head into our week in gaming. And Drac, what were you up to when you were not compiling questions?
Yeah, exactly. I spent most of my time getting questions around. The Devil's Gambit, we have talked about Grim and Barrett several times. That is the dungeon that I am spending a lot of time in, so I'm enjoying your work, NohBob, over and over and over.
And over.
But my own problem with your work is I'm not getting the quiver to drop for me. But I love your dungeon.
Well, I have good news. I didn't actually do the drop rates on this specific
game. Oh, I can't
I feel really good about what you're saying about my work.
Other than that, I love it because I see it every day, 2 times a day, every day of the week I run it. It's just getting ridiculous at this point. And then I have a level 12 rogue who reached level 12. That's the one I'm running with my friend. He is playing a wizard, and we are running a House D quest right now. And I actually ran 2 quests with him that I have never ran before. I'm not sure how this is possible, how I've skipped these quests every time I've done House D. But we did a Relic of the Sovereign Past and the Bounty Hunter. And I enjoyed both of those, and I still can't believe that.
Is that something that we should do in our group then?
We're a little high level unless we do them on Elite, which what we did, and I know that.
Okay. I thought when you said that you're level 12, I guess I assumed it was level appropriate.
No. Okay. We're just running stuff to get favor and stuff, and we're running everything on Elite if we can. But we could try them. We managed to survive, but I don't know. You're awful squishy, but
yeah, I'm squishy. Yeah. Elite and I don't work well together.
And then we also ran finished off the Sentinels of Stormreach. We did the Blacklock, Storm the Beaches, and the Tide Turns, and I love that whole quest chain. That is one of my favorite quest chains in the game. And then I have my Ranger who was level 10. That's the Gnome static group I have with Mithri, Saba Jade, and Rent Tapone. We went back into the Temple of Elemental Evil. This time we only did it on hard, and we managed to survive. And I actually, which I don't know who I pleased that day or what I did, but I got a name drop out of the end chest. Of course, it was the Elemental Bloom Quarterstaff and not the Sapphire Sting Longbow. But hey, at least I got a name drop, right?
Ooh.
And then the only other thing I did is what I did with you, Piley. We'll let you talk about that. And then, of course, I did do some tabletop D&D 5e, still running that Storm King's Thunder storyline with my friends and his kids. The party did make it to the keep in that story. That's all I'll say right now, not to I don't want to spoil too much. But they did manage to have a loss, though. I killed off the fighter. The fighter is
Ooh.
dead. And the sad part about me killing a player off is I can't even take pleasure in it.
What?
Because as soon as he died, his son looked at me and said, "Sweet, this means I can roll a different class now."
Nice.
And then my friend looked at me
Wow.
and he said, "You can't take pleasure in that death, can you?" And I'm like, "No." Yeah.
Rough.
So I'm actually, see, and that's not even the right group. That's the group I'm trying not to kill, and I managed to kill people. So yeah. So that's how it happens.
Before we move on to Pine
Sure.
Leaf, I wanted to actually go back just a little bit to that House to Neath stuff with Relic of a Sovereign Past and Bounty Hunter. Both of those are quests that came out with the game's debut back in 2006. And for a long time, and still to this day, if you were a free-to-play player, a Relic of a Sovereign Past is a great way to get your first heavy fortification item, fortification 100% item. You can collect some adamantine ore in there, and you can trade that ore in for the Nightforged Gorget, which is a level 9 item that has heavy fortification in it. And so for quite a few years, actually, other than Minos Ligon's Helm, it was probably the way to get that particular benefit. Nowadays, it's a little easier to get fortification than it used to be, but if you're a free-to-play player, you should look up Relic of a Sovereign Past, because that's a great way to get your very first sort of fortification item that you might need. It's totally free, so.
And I really enjoyed that quest, too. But I just cannot believe I've been playing as long as I have, and I've never ran that quest. I just, for some reason, either skip it or I don't know. And then the other thing I did in my week in gaming is I did do some tabletop play. I played the board game that is called Vast, and that is for a review that's coming up. So look for that really soon here on the site. And then I played a unnamed secret title, which I still can't talk about what the title is. That's going to be on Kickstarter really, really soon. I got an early preview copy of it. Really fun game. I will be putting that preview up on the site soon as well. And then another game I played for review is a video game, and that is the Warlock of Firetop Mountain we've been talking about. I played that several times, enough to where I think I have a good handle on it for review. So look for that coming on the site as well. A bunch of reviews coming, and then I have like 4 other things I'm reviewing. So a lot of review things are going to be happening on the site soon. So what about you, Pine Leaf? What were we up to, and what did you do this week?
Very well. We'll begin with my No Morlock that I adventure with you, and we went into the sands of Menectaran. And, well, I have down here a list from the last 2 weeks because...
Yeah, I threw a coup last week and tried to kick you off the show, but you came back.
Right.
You escaped the desert. See, because Anding, I forgot to tell you, Anding last week accused me of leaving you out in the desert on purpose.
And okay.
Taking the show over. So, see, Anding, he escaped the desert, so he's fine.
Right. So therefore we went through many of the things: caravan, purge, trial and shrine, a couple of chambers, physician and astrologer, an offering of blood, which the Vorkor spiral, which is a real weird thing, and then raid of Volkorem, which is tricky figuring out the lever trick. The lever trick at the end of that particular dungeon.
And can I just state one thing? Pine Leaf was so funny when we were getting ready to do that. He saw the name and he's like, "I'm not doing this. This is a raid." I'm like, "No, that's
no. I think I was saying that tongue in cheek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I laughed. It was funny. So, how are you liking the desert since that's the first time you've been out there?
It's pretty fun, though. I do say that when we went into the chamber of Korush, it looked very, very familiar. It looked very, very similar to the chamber of Ramen.
Well, you've seen one pyramid. You've seen
one of all, yes.
As long as I'm providing some tips here,
Sure.
with your stuff, the antique bronze token is something that some people have in very large quantities, you can turn them in for weapons and armor that you can then deconstruct at a Caneth crafting station to get Caneth crafting essences. So it's a good way to turn those antique bronze tokens now into Caneth crafting essences if that's what you want to do with them. And, antique bronze tokens, there was a time where they were really valuable items. Perhaps they're a little bit less so nowadays, but there's still a good use to collect those, and that is, for Caneth crafting stuff.
All right. Now, on my Drow Warlock, level 7, I went through the part 1 of Temple of Elemental Evil, and I completed that. So then, of course, next is to see how far I get in part 2 before I get squished. Probably going to get squished by Zuggtmoy, which is what usually happens. In Minecraft, I finally figured out how to make a 1.11 friendly fishing farm. This is one of those things that has been troubling people of late recently, and it seems like one of my more popular recent videos was when I put out a tutorial for that. So that was my first Minecraft tutorial. And then I also created my first iron farm, which I didn't say iron farm, but it's the idea there is to set up a situation where iron golems are created, and the iron golems then fall into a fire pit, and you are able to harvest their iron that they drop from there.
The more you talk about Minecraft, the more I'm thinking it should be called Farmcraft, because you're doing an awful lot of farming in that game.
And then in Tunnels and Trolls, I created a character to run through Grimtina's guard before I read the fine print. The fine print is no wizards allowed. And so then I created a version of Pineleaf to run through Grimtina's guard after I read that fine print. And I was surprised when the first thing that they ask you to do is to roll a d20.
Interesting.
I mean, I'm surprised that they're expecting a person reading a Tunnel and Trolls adventure to have a d20 on hand. because normally, right, everything's done on d6s. And of course, as in any type of Tunnels and Trolls solo adventure, I died before I got to the end because I don't know about you, but does anyone else think that saving rolls in Tunnels and Trolls are a little bit on the challenging side, so to speak?
Everything in Tunnels and Trolls is on the challenging side.
Yes, I know. He's here to say, oh yes, the easy saving rolls in Tunnels and Trolls require you for the roll on 2 dice plus your attribute should be 20 or greater. I said, oh great. So my attribute is 10. I need to roll a 10 on 2 dice in order to do this. Yeah, I know the whole thing about doubles and all that stuff, but when you absolutely need to make a roll, I say, if you fail this roll, I'm sorry, you're dead automatically. When you get those rolls, you can guarantee I'm not going to roll anything near doubles.
Of course not.
Of course not. So, yeah. I think they do. I think that whenever they roll these things, they're just out there to troll you. That's all I got to say. Cordovan, what were you up to when you weren't doing previews for various products?
Well, I have to admit that my actual time to play games was pretty limited in this past week because I've been really busy with DDO and then some of the work done on the sister game as well. In addition to, frankly, a lot of interviews like this one has kind of taken up most of my last week's nights doing various podcasts. I've done something like 10 interviews in the past
10?
week.
Wow.
But it's great. I mean, it's really, really cool. But it did sort of eat into my game time. On Friday night, though, I did take advantage of our 555 bonus, which was 5% heroic XP, 5% VIP XP, and a +5 treasure hunters boost to level up my gnome wizard, which is over on Thelanis, and got him almost all the way to 20 because I took advantage of that heroic XP and just did a bunch of flagging for heroic shroud, did a bunch of inspired quarter stuff and things like that. So I was able to run that with a static group, and that was probably the main gameplay thing I did outside of the live streams and stuff like that.
All right. NohBob, did you do anything in game?
Yeah, I did a bunch of stuff. I have a bi-weekly group of friends which I classically played tabletop with, and we're running slowly through the content. We're right now level 10, and we ran through Red Fens. The second we went through that chain on Sunday, and that was a lot of fun. And then previous to that, we were working on a couple other things. We did the Vaughn series, and that's been a blast. I'm playing a gnome artificer as our healer and lockpicking. That group has some very interesting character choices, but these are old friends, and we're making a good go at it. It's a lot of fun. It's been a blast getting a chance to kind of look through a lot of that stuff. And I'm about to actually go into the Sands of Nectarine with these guys and see how we're holding up. It's essentially a ranger with a good build and then three somewhat suspect builds. So it's seeing that I had to figure out how I was going to heal and do trap disarming. Artificer I went, and
I'm trying to figure out, what does Artificer do with healing?
They throw potions. You can.
Oh, yes, the potions. Okay, of course. Yes, those potions, which I keep on forgetting about when I'm playing the Artificer.
Yeah, no. I huck those potions all day long, and that's sort of the build that I'm going with because of things. I'm pretty sure in a level or two I might swap over to just a cleric, and then we may just res on the opposite side of bad traps and go through that way. But we'll see. We're gonna keep on giving it a go. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been great too, and I'm playing some other games from other companies too. I try to keep up on a lot of that stuff. And an ex-dev from DDO this past Saturday had a wedding. It's Flimsy Firewood, and he got married. And I actually got a chance to spend some time with some past and present DDO devs in a more social function, and it was a lot of fun. Good times.
So I did just think of a question, and I've been meaning to ask Cordovan this when we've had him on the show, but I've forgotten. When you guys sit down and play DDO just quote unquote for fun, do you find it weird that you're like playing your work, or can you separate it enough to where you're just playing a fun game?
That's really a better question for NohBob, actually, because I came from the player community, so for
Well,
me it's
true,
just kind of
yeah.
an extension of what I've already done.
Huh.
I can tell you just sort of third party that I rarely see a time when we were just totally playing for fun, and I don't hear a dev or something say, "Oh, we should fix that," or like, we should do this, or ask a question about how it was implemented or something like that. So even when they're playing, they're at work.
Well, and that's a little bit true, but really, like, the idea is that given my sort of lapse of time that I spent away from the project, I really want to get a chance to go through the different pieces of content, and it's completely different in my development role, looking at that content and seeing what it is, and taking kind of a newer player approach going through these content pieces. We have a blast, and we played through my Dungeons and Slavers, and my friends were hooting and hollering, and I got to stand back and watch one of them go up through the illusionary trap in Slavers, and watch his soulstone just drop like a rock, and all of us just laughing. Like, the best part about it is it's a really great experience, because I did miss some content. I didn't get a chance to do it, and also it allows me to put a different hat on. It allows me to put, okay, what is the play experience that I'm going through, and how do I filter the feedback that I'm getting through players, through the play experience that I've experienced, and also the feedback from my longtime D&D playing friends. Like, we've been playing games for 15 years now. Eladrin was a part of this group, and he's one of my buddies, and that's sort of where I've come from. So it's something that I really try to do when I have time. That being said, I also play a couple other different games, just so that I have different things. I like shooters too, and so I'm getting a chance to play some of those. but really kind of taking that development hat and being like, this is the play experience. It's important to feel what's going through, and also pain points. Like I run into pain points that I see complaints about. It's something that I can be passionate and active about, and it's something that I could be a champion for the players and also that. I do spend a decent amount of time lurking on streams because also that's a really great way to get feedback when I'm not yapping it up with folks. But yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
All right. We currently have 24 supporters on Patreon, and if you would like to help support DDO players, simply go to the donations page where you can support the Players Alliance on Patreon. There you will find rewards, including a mention on the podcast of your choice, or even be a guest with us here for an episode of DDO Players News. By supporting us on Patreon, you'll help us to upgrade our cameras so that we can bring you better convention and tabletop play review coverage. If you would like to send us an email, you can send it to podcast@ddoplayers.com. You can also follow us at Twitter, the Players Alliance @PlayersAlly, DDO Players @DDO Players, Draculetta @Draculetta_72, Pineleaf @Pineleaf News. You can also follow our guests, Cordovan @Jerry Snook, and NohBob @NohBob. And you can also follow DDO @DDO Unlimited. The Players Alliance has 4 live shows every Monday at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We have DDO Players News every Thursday at 8 p.m.-ish U.S. Eastern Time. We have XP Quest every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We have Lotro Players News, and on the last Friday of each month at 8:30 p.m., we have Lotro Academy After School. You can join us for our live shows at ddoplayers.com/live. Everyone, please thank our guests this week for coming with us. We really had a blast having you along.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's always great to be on the show.
Yeah, and thank you, NohBob, for coming on for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a blast. I hope some of the information helps you folks out, and people are kind of into it, and I appreciate the invite.
And anytime you want to come back, you are more than welcome. Just let me know or let Cordovan know, and we'll get you back on.
Cool.
All right. And that is it for tonight, and this is Pineleaf Needles reminding you to quest responsibly.